Good afternoon. Welcome to Tellus Science Museum Mineral Symposium 2021, Day 5, last day of this Mineral Symposium. We've enjoyed all the speakers we've had this week. And today we have our final speaker, Jeff Deere, who is a member of a local club, the Georgia Mineral Society, and has been a past member of the Rome Club, and he's also been their field trip coordinator. So he's had a lot of involvement with the local clubs and collectors, and he has also shared his collection at times with Tellus Science Museum. We have items on loan from him and also items that he's donated to the museum. And Jeff's going to talk about his experience as a collector and also his interactions with the clubs and the community. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here, be with you. It's been a while since you invited me to this opportunity, and I'm very excited to be here to share with you today. We had a great speaker yesterday in Peter, and hopefully I can live up to that. Like Peter's discussion yesterday, mine also is somewhat of a personal journey, I would suppose. And also like Peter's discussion yesterday, this is also about the community, the collecting community, if you will. Somewhat unlike yesterday's discussion, everything that I've done with minerals and collecting over the past 22 years is, of course, extracurricular to me. It's not what I do for a living, and it's not my schooling or education, etc. So without any further ado, I'd like to get started. And I suppose that I developed an affinity for rocks and minerals and collecting as a young child. Trips to North Carolina, trips to North Georgia. As we like to say here in Georgia, there's gold in them there hills. And so from an early age, I developed an interest in rocks and minerals. This is probably a state park somewhere up in North Georgia. This is a picture of me in probably 1975. I'm at Paladuro Canyon between Lubbock and Amarillo. Interesting geology, and I will say that if you ever want a geography and a geology lesson, take a 2-day drive from Atlanta, Georgia to Lubbock, Texas. That'll teach you a few things. I grew up in the Atlanta area, and this picture from DeKalb County, heck, we even had rocks in our front yard, so there you go. Living in the Atlanta area under the shadow of a monadnock. I suppose you could say that the poor lad never really had a chance, right? Fate, I guess we'll call it. To paraphrase, variety is the spice of life, and quite frankly, you'll find that with mineral collecting, it can be different things to different people. A lot of people can collect in different ways. You can collect at different ages. From a hobbyist perspective, it's very versatile. You can collect from a very early age. Is this a GMS furnished photo? A young child developing interest in minerals and science and collecting and outdoors. Children of all ages enjoy collecting. Look at that whopper that young lady's got. I've worked all day for less than that. And you can collect all the way up to your latter years. Pictured right, Ben Crawford. Pictured left, Harry Van Dias. And you can collect them in many ways. Here we have Mary Sinyard of the Rome, Georgia Mineral Society, and probably around 2003 or something, and she's just collecting with a bucket and scratch tools. This young man here is digging a hole. That's because the site requires it, but to each their own. One may dig a hole, one may scratch the ground. Others may choose to use heavy equipment because that's what it takes. This is a picture of the earlier days at Jackson's Crossroads near Tignall. Rodney Moore is seen there in the background on this shot. One of the things about mineral collecting is you get to go to places that nobody else goes. And so if you like being outdoors, it's fun. It's very exciting. This is a picture of Nantahala Gorge looking south from the Nantahala Talc and Limestone Quarry. On a particular field trip, I've attended maybe 3 or 4 or 5 at that location. This looks south towards Murphy. Beautiful scenery. Who else could get that photo, right? You wouldn't get that if you weren't on a mineral collecting trip. Some people just like to be outdoors. The nature is part of the collecting. It's not all the sites have nature, but in this particular case, it's a swift-flowing stream on Lookout Mountain, which I found out last week is flowing a little more swift than I thought. Or, you could just be a lazy day under the Georgia pines. This photo from Pickens County is dedicated to a friend of mine that passed this past year, John Miller. Who could not get excited, though, with cracking open a geode and be the first person to see the crystals? That's the excitement, is no one else has seen it until you find it. And that's what's intriguing, what's exciting about it. This is quartz geode fragments. When you hit a geode, they don't always behave like you want. This one's just a couple of fragments, but there's a couple of keepers there. It's a swift flowing stream in Kentucky. They call it a river. Or the excitement of just collecting small fragments of garnet. These in North Carolina, I think at Buck Creek on a Rome, Georgia Mineral Society field trip some years ago. And the simplicity of a corundum crystal from Probst Farm in North Carolina. This is taken off GMS website, I believe. The beautiful symmetry of a corundum crystal. Freshly unearthed. They always look best as soon as you pull them from the ground, right? And here's that whopper of a quartz crystal that young lady had. And like I said, I've worked all day for much less. This particular site, I believe, is in northeast Georgia somewhere. It's the junior section, I believe, goes to this site. Anyway, that's a beautiful piece. And here we have, some of Bartow's finest. This is a freshly unearthed cluster, a small cluster of barite, BaSO4. I love that cold blue feel of that. Beautiful. And here we have yours truly with the simplicity of a large microcrystal. I guess that's big for a microcrystal. This is in Pickens County, Georgia, taken some few years ago. So as you can see, collecting can be different things to different people. You can collect in different ways. You collect different materials, young, old, etc. So it's a very versatile hobby, I guess from a hobbyist perspective. But really, before we go any further, I'm afraid we're going to have to do a little history lesson. I know everybody's like, oh, you had good pictures. But anyway, I believe it's important to understand that, the past, so you can understand where you are now and understand also where you're going. And I think the same thing holds true for mineral collecting in general. So without any further ado on that, obviously the first collecting was, ore prospecting. And, it's collecting is the genesis of geology, quite frankly. I mean, without picking up a rock, where would we be, right? So also equally as important and also as old, really, is the use of minerals for pharmaceutical reasons. That goes back to perhaps even BC. And, of course, in some of the darker ages, it's confused with black magic, etc., etc. But, some collections or many collections were actually started before the Renaissance and at the Renaissance for pharmaceutical reasons. But at some point, everybody's catching on, hey, this stuff's pretty. So you've got gems and minerals and kings and queens, but we really don't get going until the Renaissance. And this is a little history lesson. This is Mr. Agricola, and he's really the first known and documented mineral collector we have. As I just alluded to, his original collection was thought to be for pharmaceutical reasons in general, but along the way he began to get a lot of specimens. He's from Saxony, so a lot of specimens from the silver mines, etc. He wrote several books. One of them was posthumous, but many of those had to do with the separation of ores from metals in general. But he's often known as the father of mineralogy. So without this guy, we could do a whole talk on Agricola, perhaps. But here's an important thing, and it's a common theme, is his extensive collection did not survive. That's a real pity. And we'll find that that's true throughout history, really. He was a big collector. This is Emperor Rudolf II, who was the king of Bohemia and Germany, and became emperor upon his father's passing, of course. But he was somewhat of an odd and reclusive gentleman, and his refuge was in scholarships and culture, and he began to collect minerals with great enthusiasm and built a tremendous collection. He had a court physician, I believe his name was Emilius Debu, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And so he amassed this massive collection, and as I understood in reading about this gentleman last year and prior, rooms and rooms of castles full of gems and minerals. Here we go again, though. His predecessors, his brother, was heir to the throne, and at any rate, they don't have appreciation for the collection. So upon his passing, all the collection was packed into barrels, and then some years later, 100 years in fact or so, the entire collection was sold off to private property. So we really don't know what pieces were in his collection and what pieces ended up in other famous collections to this day in Europe and Asia, etc. But we got to flash forward because we don't want to spend too much time in the Renaissance, and I don't want to be in there anyway. But this is a set of individuals that set the stage for where we are today. This is a state geologist from the state of Georgia, Dr. George Little on the left. Really was probably the first guy to get the public interest going in gems and minerals from the state of Georgia. If I'm not mistaken, he set up the original collection, state of Georgia collection, and would actually go publicly, like to the Cotton Exposition and other expositions around the Southeast, showing off minerals from Georgia. So he kind of gets the ball rolling, and then thereafter we've got William Yates, who, among other things, hired a lot of great help, but he started really the publications. His best-known work was Deposits of Gold, or I don't have that name exactly right, probably. Upon his waning days, he got sick and was rendered where he couldn't really work, so the state appointed McCallie as the state geologist, where he took over the publication materials and the bulletins and moved that forward in more of an economic way, if you will. But after, this is the heyday of, Georgia geology, if you will. Everything is getting mapped. All the bulletins and publications are there. So it kind of sets the stage for the future. But, two real publications that are important to me, there's, you're talking about Bulletin 92 and Bulletin 103 here. So there's literally hundreds of publications on minerals in Georgia. But we've got Robert Cook, Dr. Cook, to thank for combining a lot of these publications and getting them kind of under one roof, if you will, to create what we rockhounds call, the Bible, the Georgia Bible, if you will. Of course, it's been reprinted and republished with Jose and Bob Cook and Julian. I prefer my old copy there with the Wyman sticker. So we've kind of set the stage here now where clubs come into play. Again, this is the hobbyist perspective. But, there's strength in numbers. And I think that if you're out there and you're new and you're thinking about collecting, or then you should probably consider joining a club. And because the organization of a club helps so much with your ability to collect. This is that's what's getting to be a pretty old photo of the old Bartow County maintenance shop where you used to sign in to go on field trips to the Ladd's Quarry, or at Ladd Mountain or Quarry Mountain on the west side of Cartersville. But the point is that you interact with others, it's organized, you create friendships, and additionally to that, there's a safety factor with clubs in that you have safety screenings, you make sure that nobody gets hurt out there. And I'm going to stop and thank all of the field trip chairmen out there that lead any field trips for the job that they do month after month after month after month, maintaining organized events and safe events. This here, a picture at Red Oak Quarry, which is near the Atlanta airport. probably maybe 2-3 years ago as a GMS led by Charles Carter. This is Jim Flora, and I'm going to take a minute and thank Jim Flora. Sometime around the turn of the century, we'll call it, I joined the Georgia Mineral Society, and Jim was kind enough to give me a call one evening. I recall it like it's yesterday. And I spoke with Jim for probably an hour, maybe over an hour, and I was very, very, very excited to immediately learn that not only could I go on a field trip maybe once a month, I might be able to go on a field trip just about once a week. And so, my jaw fell open, and I knew right then and there my life had changed. Jim, pictured left at Nantahala, pictured right at Lake Chateau with Cheryl Cornell, set up the Dixie Mineral Council, which is a shared field trip scenario between clubs around the Southeast. The point being is you're a host club every so often, and you host trips to your locations. And so that's been a big, big, big move and a development in the mineral collecting world here in the Southeast is setting up the Dixie Mineral Council. And I thank you, Jim, and I know a lot of people do thank you. Back to collecting. These kids are really getting it done somewhere in Northeast Georgia. But the point is that you may not find anything on a trip, or you may find something, but if you join a club, I promise you're going to find something. And so these last two slides, GMS furnished slides from Lori Carter and Charles Carter. But within, clubs and mineral societies, you've got a lot of people, and they've got different ideas about what they like. So you have certain niches, and we call them sections. So you might have the micro mount section or the juniors section. And right now I'm going to pick on sand because I've kind of gotten into doing a little bit of micro photography myself, and this is magnified. What you're looking at here is sand from Hawaii. This is epidote, basically. You can learn about geology. You can learn that this is, volcanic in origin, with this curvature here. What's neat about this piece, of course, is this little thing right here. That's a pearl. It's a pearl. This is furnished from Laura Carter, and photo credit, I believe, is a gentleman named Leo Kenny. And what you're looking at here is it sand or is it? That's what I say. This is from Clinchfield, Georgia, a small community south of Macon, basically on the fall line. These are fossilized Bryozoan, and along with shell fragments, I believe. But you can learn a lot from sand. That's just one of the many educational aspects of joining a club. I like to say when I go on a field trip, they're just not going to hop in your bucket. If you're walking around with buckets, they're not going to bite you on the ankle. You're going to have to work to get good materials. And this next section is about, I guess I would use the word gumption. I had the pleasure of going out and visiting Chester Karwoski. This is Chester Karwoski on your left, in a somewhat deep hole somewhere in Elbert County, he tells me. And on the right with Tom Brockway and Jim Maudsley, Chester, and I believe that's Howard Hall of a particular location, the Hall's location we used to call it. At any rate, Chester and his group, and sometimes the slang here in the Southeast is the Athens gang. Call it whatever you want. Some of the Athens Club members, a consortium. I like to use that word, but they've been very instrumental in shaping the landscape here of collecting in the Southeast. One of the first groups to begin to use heavy equipment. Also did a wonderful job of photo documentation of many of their field trips, exploits, if you will. I would call this the right-hand man. The gentleman's name is Russell Huff, I believe, from Bogart, Georgia, holding a really nice beryl crystal over there on the left, or a big one anyway. Russell helped Chester and his friends, we'll call collect for many years, assisting with the backhoe operation on various and sundry sites. Thing about Russell, as I understood, his wife was from maybe down I-20 area out Warrenton or somewhere down that way, and she recalled collecting amethyst crystals as a young child or as a young lady, and so it was a natural thing, I suppose, for Russell to be the backhoe operator for Chester and his friends. This is an interesting piece that comes from Oglethorpe County in northeast Georgia. If you're not familiar with it, it was at the Wyman Mineral Museum, and then of course at Tellus. This display behind glass at Tellus. This thing is some 3.5, 4 feet wide. I'm not going to get too hung up into dimensions today, but it's a very unique piece, and there's a little bit of a story that goes behind it. In that, when I sat with Chester, and he said it was called the Muscadines of Ogathor. It's kind of a pale amethyst, if you will, but he had indicated to me that some years prior, maybe 2 years prior, there was a strike in Maine where a group found some amethyst, and it was they entitled the pocket the 4th of July pocket because it was found during the 4th of July. And the feature specimen out of that pocket was actually called the Grape of Maine. So what we decided, I guess Chester and his friends decided, was we were going to call this the Muscadines of Ogathor. And, originally I thought, well, that I found it as funny and ironic. But, in all seriousness, Chester said to me, it was named that to put Georgia on par with Maine. Think about that a little bit. We have a lot of mineral diversity here in Georgia. So I was able to find online this particular grape, if you will. So indeed it did exist, and indeed it's not a spoof, but it's meant to put Georgia on par with Maine. I would contend to you that Georgia has more versatility than Maine, more varieties. But anyway, this is the iconic picture that you see on the graphic behind the piece. It's an Athens member. I think his name is Harris. We've got some other photos here that probably never seen before. There it is, huge vein of quartz crystals. Our little quarter there for scale, if you will. I'm sure this thing was a bear to take apart. I can imagine boxes upon boxes with numbers labeled on them going into cars. And as I understood, it took some 200 plus hours to put this piece back together. There's glasses there for scale. I don't know whose home they did that at or where this is, but there's another shared photo courtesy of Chester Kowalski. Here's another image of that. And so when I asked Chester about this particular photo, he said that that's John Kuntz left, by the way, and several anonymous people on the right. And he said that the chisel and the shovel and the mattock were there for scale. And, when I see this picture, I actually saw something different. I saw a famous painting, American Gothic. See there? Just a little mineral humor for you. Also, the Athens gang, if you will, collected at Grays Mountain in the 90s many, many times. And from there, there's donations become involved with the museum and museums. This is a picture of David Smith. I believe that's Don Brockway with his back to you. What looks to be Rutiles. Some freshly unearthed Rutiles. I don't know if they came out that clean or not. That's certainly bright and brilliant luster for something that came right out of the ground, but you get the idea. These guys are breaking ground at Grays Mountain, literally. This is a piece on loan from David at the Tellus Science Museum on Matrix. Very nice piece. These two pieces are Jeff Scoville photos. One on the left, I believe, is actually a Tellus Museum owned piece. The one on the right might be Mike Galvin, one of the Athens guys. I don't think it resides here at Tellus. Beautiful Rutiles, titanium oxide from Grays Mountain, Georgia. Much could be said about Grays Mountain, Georgia, and I'm probably not the one to do it, but there are certainly a lot of different minerals there, which make that location very fun to collect. This next piece is hematite-coated quartz. I believe this is a Chester Karwoski loan to the museum currently. This is a Jeff Scoville photograph. It's also been published in the Minerals of Georgia as well. Beautiful piece. And here we have porphyroite. Now, at graves, this can come in red, burgundy, pink, yellow. To me, I believe the iconic color at graves is the beautiful blue-green that you see here. And, of course, porphyroite has those beautiful radial sprays. Again, I'm not going to get into what the size is exactly. Among other things that Chester has done in the southeast is kind of open up Diamond Hill Mine to where the common man could collect there, if you will. Now, Chester's not the first owner and wasn't the last of Diamond Hill Mine, of course. But I often found that when Chester opened Diamond Hill up to collectors, that there were a lot of trips out there. But if you wanted to move dirt, then you could find good materials. It was always left in a certain condition whereby, if you wanted to work, you could get good stuff. This is a smoky piece from, I guess you would call a private dig, if you will. This one, I believe, resides here at Tellus. If I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will correct me. It's a beautiful smoky piece. It's got a little tint of ammy to it. It's probably from this, what I would call a center pit area, but I can't speak. I wasn't at that particular dig. Another beautiful piece. What discussion would not be complete about collecting in the southeast without mentioning this man? This is Rodney Moore. I haven't talked to Rodney in a number of years. The Rodney I know is a big-hearted man that loves to collect. This taken at the Hog Mine. This photo is from the Hog Mine. And of course, the Hog Mine is a very famous location here in Georgia as well. So much beryl came out of there. The reading I did, I think it was over 170,000 pounds of beryl were sold to the purchasing department in Spruce Pine, to the government. It's really, in Georgia, it's the only real economically feasible mine in Georgia to produce beryl. And of course, it has the rose quartz as well, and there's tourmaline variety schorl there as well. But really, it's all about the beryl at the Hog Mine. This is a Rodney Moore piece. Photo credit goes to Michelle Matthews and Rodney Moore. That's a really nice piece. It's some 4 inches long, looks to me like, and with the terminated, you got the flat top termination. With beryl, you don't always get a good termination at the top. Really nice piece. And the other site that Rodney, of course, was involved in was the Jackson's Crossroads. He managed to get his hands on the property and wrangled it from the lumber people and started, the mine that is Jackson's Crossroads. He began what is now a national or internationally renowned locale, if you will. Some of the amethysts from JXR is some of the best in the state or even in the United States or the world. This piece is called Georgia Belle, I believe. It's resides at Tellus Science Museum, donated by Bill Mitchum. In memorial to Aubrey Bottoms. This is a Michelle Matthews photo, as I recall. Beautiful, beautiful stuff, JXR. A little closer to home, though. This is the donation from Jim Hagee. John first met Jim from the Cobb Club, and then, of course, he's attended a lot of the Rome shows that we've done in the past. This is a piece of calcite from right here in Bartow County. This is from Ladd's Quarry, or Ladd's Mountain, if you will. It's basically, in short, it's a cave formation. Cave onyx is what we call this variety. Beautiful piece, fairly large piece too. This is one of my all-time favorites from Ladd's Mountain. This is actually, I believe, a Santa Maria donation to the museum, if I'm not mistaken. And the bitoroidal iron-stained interior of this little vug, that's beautiful. I believe this one's about 12 centimeter, if I'm ever going to say the size of something. That's one of my faves. And there's a story here with this one. And chrysocolla. And it's donated by the Spencer family, and I met them originally from Carroll County Club and perhaps the Georgia Mineral Society. But these pieces were collected from road construction. Okay, so how many times have we ever driven by a pile of rocks on the side of the road and thought, I wonder what's there, and then you come back the next week and it's gone? Well, this family had the gumption, there's that word again, gumption, to collect. And I'm not ever advocating that somebody risk their life trying to collect a rock or break a law trying to collect a rock. But in this case, this family, this is important because this is a family that are members of a club, and they found material that's donated to the Tellus Science Museum. It's a beautiful piece, beautiful pieces, if you will. Here's a close-up of it that's published in the Minerals of Georgia book. This is the Jeff Scoville photo. I believe that's, I don't know, maybe 3 centimeter by 2 centimeter viewing area there. Beautiful blue-green material. Gumption, that was the word. You know, the harder I work, the luckier I get. Man, just stands to reason, doesn't it? It's very elementary. So this next section is a little bit about some of the things I've had the pleasure of doing over the last 22 years, if you will. It's pictured left, this is me at Grays Mountain, me and my buddies. On this day, I believe, was Hayward and Streeter. Nibbled on that wall long enough to where we did find a few pockets. And by the time it was said and done, you were able to put your entire arm in one of those pockets. And so we're in the upper pit at Graves, south-facing wall, probably, the quartz wall there. And so we collected our share of iridescent hematite, beautiful stalactitic stuff over the day. And, you know, the funny thing about Graves, this was at an open house, and so there was a lot of people around the mountain at that time. And so, you know, I stopped to take a break and look down, and there was, you know, some 20 to 40 people down there looking up at us collecting. What an enjoyable, fun moment. Here's a piece of that material that came from that pocket or one of those pockets. I believe there were 2 on that day. This was actually on temporary exhibit at a Tellus temporary exhibit, Gems and Treasures of the Southeast or something to that. It was on an exhibit for probably a year and a half or something. It's beautiful stalactitic stuff, beautiful color in some of that, just screaming color, really nice. I couldn't leave Grays without showing you this one. This is a Mike Streeter specimen, Mike Streeter photo. It's got this metavolcanic with a little hole in it, and it has this beautiful little stalactitic, bitoroidal stuff on the inside. This is a very unique specimen that I just can't get enough of, and wanted to show it to you today. And it was part of those pockets that we found that week, and then subsequently probably in the previous week or weeks. You know, you can't be afraid to get dirty if you're going to collect. Oh my! This is a picture. This is Bill Hayward on the left from North Carolina, and of course yours truly on the right. This is at the Eureka Prospect in Crittenden County, Kentucky. Can't collect there anymore, I'm sorry to say, but we had our fun there for about 5 years. Once a year we would go for a long weekend. Some of the problems with that particular location was the water table. You know, you turn around an hour later and the water's, you know, back up at your knees. So, you know, when it's your turn to work the pump, it's your turn to work the pump. What can you say? What you're looking at here is a pocket from that location. This is a Everett Harrington photo, a friend of ours that we collected with one time. Phoebe was from Michigan, but anyway, you could tell this is very dark when you pop up in one of these pockets. The material almost looks black. But the beauty of this pocket and the other pockets and some of the that we collected was that it was above the water line, and the material below the water was always etched. Here's a beautiful piece of some of that fluorite. This is, again, a Mike Streeter photo, Mike Streeter specimen. And the same with this one. The material at that location wasn't always purple. I did find probably on my last trip there some yellow and also some blue. This is a gnarly little piece from Diamond Hill, and then the next few pieces will be from Diamond Hill. What I enjoy about this piece, really, this is from the center pit, and it's a Milky Quartz piece. But what I enjoy about this piece is it has this secondary growth of druze on it or something, as you can probably see here and here. Kind of brings up the next specimen, which is a skeletal piece. But the point being is this has crystals almost on all four sides. The formations at Diamond Hill are so gnarly that, you know, the connection may just be one little piece the size of a dime on the back of one, and the rest of it is covered in crystals. So very difficult to collect there sometimes when you can't even tell which end's up and everything's covered with mud. You know, getting material out of Diamond Hill without scuffs and dings always proved to be a challenge for collectors. This is another piece from Diamond Hill. Other than the fact that it resembles a Halloween pumpkin to me, it's actually one of my favorites. It's fairly large piece that I've extracted. It's one of my favorites in my collection. You know, Diamond Hill has smokies, and it has, you know, some amethysts. You know, to me though, the iconic image, the iconic thing about Diamond Hill is the skeletal quartz, where you've got that the crystals, I guess, both growing and dissolving at the same time. They give you this diamond pattern. This is, again, one of my specimens, one of my photos. We're going to take a real quick trip up to northwest Georgia. This is from Catoosa County. This is from the location right off Highway 27 there. You know, a lot of people collect that material in that chert pit for the agates and try and find solid pieces of agate, you know, that you can cut and polish. But, you know, really when I go to this particular location, I like to focus on the formations and things like that. This is like, you know, pink druze in the middle of chert, and it's a stark contrast. I'm looking for contrast when I go to that location. It makes for a nice photograph. And here's some of that formation action that I just mentioned. Is, you know, this stalactitic stuff. So, you know, my wife often asks me, well, why do you go back to the same place? And, you know, the answer is to find something better, I guess. We're going to get out of South Georgia real quick. This is a piece of Withlacoochee material from the Withlacoochee River, Agatized Coral, if you will, beautiful honey-type colored bitroidal druze. One of my favorites from my collection. I think I got a dime over there, maybe, or something for scale for you. But it's another very pretty piece. Agatized Coral from the Withlacoochee. As is this, and, you know, when you hit them, they don't always break like you want. You know, this one kind of broke for me like a geode, which I was happy about. It's a very moody, spooky kind of piece, you know. Also another one of my favorites from that location. We're going to run up to Tennessee, to the Sweetwater Mining District area, Sweetwater, Tennessee. This is fluorite, along with barite, and what I believe is probably smithsonite smattering all over it. I'm sure Travis Paris could tell me exactly. There's crystals up there at that particular location range from about a 1/4 inch tops, maybe 3/8 inch tops. Again, this is my photo, my specimen, as is this, which is a better shot of it. Also, what I find that I really like about it is you start to see these barite balls start to happen on that material. Very aesthetically pleasing piece also. These are Jeff Scoville photographs of material here from Cartersville. This is barite. The one on the left has a phantom. As you can see, very lustrous material. This is Jeff Scoville photographed Jeff Deere specimens. And sticking with Bartow County, This is a piece that's actually on loan at Tellus right now. That's a specimen that I found. And the photos are by Jeff Scoville. Funny thing about this piece, the story behind it is, I had a truckload of material, and you get home and you start cleaning up some of it and washing some of it. And this was the last piece that I pulled out of the truck to even look at, because I really didn't suspect it was going to be anything more than a big ugly. All I could really see was this part right here, and that's what made me bring it home. And when I gently took the hose to it, I was quite astonished. My mouth fell open in my driveway. I knew I had something special. This is a very special piece, very colorful, very unique to Bartow County here. This is from a group of prospects known as the Vineyard Mountain Group, down near Vineyard Mountain, obviously. Here's a little closer view of it. I always play with this material and these photographs and spin them around and whatnot, but it's beautiful color, and now you're kind of getting into micros. So this is a shot furnished to me by my friend Mark Bishop, who moved to Texas, and I miss him as a collecting partner, I must say. This is a real tight shot. I don't have the size of it, of some JXR material that he furnished to me. I like that. It's a pretty piece. This is barite, also here from Bartow County. This is a Jose Santa Maria specimen, Jose Santa Maria photograph. And I'm not going to get too much into the sizes on all these. I don't know, 5 millimeter, something like that, between 5 and 7 millimeter. These next few here, beautiful stuff. You can see the striations, water, crystal clear material that come from the dumps here in Cartersville. There's another one, very nice background on that one. This is one of mine, and we're really getting tight now, right? This is, I don't know, 2 millimeter or less. I'm trying to shoot as close as I can. And so we're getting into some things that are becoming into abstract art when you really start to get too tight, too close. Again, this is barite here from Cartersville. So in nature, there is perfection, and man can only apply excellence. That's really my thought process there. So when you get material home, you've got a lot of options, right? I mean, you can photograph your stuff, document it, et cetera, but you can also get into doing some different things with it, cutting slabs, polishing slabs. Some of this next few slides come courtesy of Mike Streeter off his website. The one on the left there is, I believe, from Cranberry Iron Mine, if I'm not mistaken. What I find really cool about it is it's a landscape, and it looks like a landscape, but to me it kind of looks like a Van Gogh painting. Crazy stuff, beautiful. So there's things that you can do. This is, I believe some of this is New Mexico material, but again, it's cut, polish, even backlit. You could do many things to it. Materials, when you get them home, you can get into lapidary. Cut stones, polished stones, jewelry, etc. This is, my friends, this is ruby. This is from up near Chunky Gal. There's some more of that material cut in different ways. And once you do that, you can wrap it, and you can do silversmithing. You can do all sorts of things. To the one on the left is from Mike, and the other one is, the other two are from Chrissy. Really love the blue kyanite piece. Very nice. So as we've seen, you can do stuff with your materials when you get them home. The whole thing, though, is about the journey. And what I would want to say about this next segment is that it's not necessarily about my friends, but you should probably collect with a buddy. If not just for safety reasons, you probably need to have friends to go in the field with. I don't know that being a loner is really going to get you where you want to be with your collection. Maybe it will, but I would suggest that if there's anybody out there new or interested in collecting, that they should probably network with people. They should probably find friends with like-minded friends with similar interests and collect. A couple of things here. This is Jim Hagee on the left, who was kind enough many years ago to take his lunchtime at Graves while he was eating his sandwich and point me in the right direction to a couple of places where I might be able to find and come home with a smile, and I did, and I thank you, Jim. On the right is Kim Cochran, past curator at the Weinman Mineral Museum, who's imparted knowledge on me, with me, here whenever I meet him at the museum, whether it's intellectual stuff about minerals or particular sites. I'm thankful to Kim Cochran in that way. This is Dr. Bob, as we all know him, or Robert Madden. I first met Bob Madden when I joined the Rome Club, and he was the field trip chairman. Pictured left, he and Dory in Kentucky, pictured right at Ladd's Mountain. And the thing that I would want to say and stress about Bob is he is also a donor and has donated pieces to the museum. Over the 22 years that I've known Bob Madden, he's never waned in his interest for field trip collecting. And in fact, he'll go places much further than I. This is a former neighbor of mine, Canty Smith. I guess I can say she's the director of education at Tellus Emeritus. She's since retired. On the left, a big smile from a Geode collecting trip in Kentucky, and pictured right at Nantahala Limestone Quarry. And I would say with Canty, she is very sneaky good. I'll just leave it at that. Sometimes you may be focusing on trying to bust up rock, and it's right underneath your foot and you never knew it, and Canty will show you that from time to time. The important thing about what Canty's doing on the right there is she's wrapping her materials. Very important. Well, this is Mike Streeter, and I can tell you I only thought I knew how to dig a hole until I met Mike. I only thought I knew how to disassemble a rock wall until I met Mike. His physical approach to collecting is unprecedented, unparalleled. I wouldn't be half the collector I am without knowing Mike and Chrissy. They've enriched my life in many ways. And I wouldn't be the other half. I don't know how many halves I am today, but I wouldn't be the other half of the collector that I am without this gentleman on my right, which needs no introduction, but we'll do it anyway. This is Jose Santa Maria, this picture taken last summer in Catoosa County with the pup Buck. And of course, Jose's provided a lot of wisdom, but one of the funniest things, and the keeping it real part, one of the funniest things that he ever told me right when I first met him is, if you get into stress with clubs, you get into my hole, your hole, my specimen, your specimen, you just remember it's just rocks. And so that's the little chill pill message that I've tried to live by over the last 22 years. It's just rocks, Anyway, this man here has been a friend of mine and a collecting partner for over 22 years. This is Donald Henderson, retired pharmacist, UGA graduate, seen left collecting geodes in Kentucky, and by golly, we had some big geodes on that day. Seen right at the Amplet Mine South Prospect, Cherokee County, holding a piece of mica. Of course, we're there to try and collect some schorl tourmaline. Don has been a very trustworthy collecting partner for me for years, and he can still traverse the most strenuous terrain. I can attest to that from a recent trip with Don. So, friends, collecting community, families. We were just talking about rocks, right? So in summary, field collecting can appeal to many people regardless of age or ability. It can be a way of life, it can be a weekend getaway, it can be just a day outdoors, or really all of the above. You make it what it needs to be, okay? Probably your route to a successful collecting trip is through a mineral club. That's my idea of it. That's the process that I've gone through, and that's what I find on a whole. Individuals, consortiums, and clubs pretty much shape the current state of our hobbyist collecting these days. photography, macro, micro, arts and crafts. Also provide other hobbyist enjoyments after collecting. If collecting and time spent finding new discoveries wasn't enough, the lasting experiences and friendships are what make mineral field collecting a real treasure. So with that, I really have to thank a few people that helped me out with this. Chester and Gail Karwoski spent an hour on the phone with Jim Flora last year. Mike and Chris Streeter. Mike's helped me out with various images. Charles and Laurie Carter have helped me out with various emails and images. And, of course, Jose Santa Maria has helped immensely in several ways and also has graciously allowed me to use some of the Tellus-owned photos in this presentation. So I thank you very much. It was a labor of love.
Well, thank you, Jeff. It was a pleasure to see that history, and a lot of the people that you mentioned I've gotten to know over the few years as curator here at Tellus. And so it's been a pleasure to see the relationships that have formed all over the state and actually around the Southeast. We have a question from Ellie Watson. She actually has a question for you for when you're out in the field. Is there a particular time of year that feels easier to find good minerals? And she even says that, maybe in the ground or in the streams.
Well, yes, I really don't like summer, so I'm not going to be collecting them. It's 90 degrees. My rule is pretty much to collect from, late summer, Labor Day. Certainly not any after Memorial Day. To me the sweet spot is if you're out there collecting and it's about 50 degrees. Insofar as sites are concerned, you go where you go. So, maybe something might be in a stream, and that's the access to the material. Or maybe another location may be where you're going to have to dig in hard clay. It just varies site by site. But to answer your question, I don't like hot weather, and I don't like to dig in the hot. I'd rather dig in the cold.
Okay. So what has been your most recent exciting dig that you've gotten to do?
The most recent exciting dig would have been the most recent dig. And not that this is not a fossil symposium, but we were at I led a trip Jose and I did to the Durham coal mines area last week, and that was an enjoyable, fun dig. You always seem to find material there simply by splitting the shale. The interesting thing about collecting is the site that you dug at 3 years ago may not be available this year. It may not be available next year. It could be closed forever. So my wife's heard me say this before, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I have to go, right? So at any rate, I hope I answered that question.
So how many once in a lifetime opportunities have come up multiple times for you?
At least 1,000. At least 1,000.
Very good. And I think thank you for sharing those stories with us and sharing the pictures and giving us that knowledge that you have gained. And also, as the curator of the museum, thank you for the things that you lend to us and the things that you have donated to us. I've got a donation on the shelf behind me here. I don't know if the camera is going to show that. But thank you for all the various things that you've done and your involvement. And I look forward to going out in the field with you again. I've been out collecting barite with you, and we've gotten dirty and in the mud with Jose, and so we'll continue the fun. And hopefully, listeners here, if you're in the Georgia area and you're on these other field trips, say hi to us as we're out in the field digging.
Thank you, Ryan, for having me.
And I've not had any other questions come in, so with that, thank you again for sharing your ideas and your thoughts and your experience.
Congratulations to you on a successful symposium.
Oh, thank you. And now that this is our last speaker, and we've now got 5 speakers on Facebook Live and on YouTube. If you missed any of the earlier sessions, go ahead and look online and tune in to see what else the other speakers have had to say. Until next year, have a great day.